there was several buses that went up to march on Washington on the inauguration day in January of 2017. And from there was a call to action, sort of 100 days of action. And we formed a small group. I invited people from the bus to come to my house to write postcards, and 4 people showed up, and we wrote postcards that night to our legislators. And as it progressed, as we went through some of the actions, 3 of us had more daytime availability. So we came up with the idea that we would meet once a week and tackle, an item. And we decided we wanted to keep the group small for several reasons. One, just where we live, there's people on all sides of the issues, and we just kind of wanted to be a little bit more private and supportive of each other. We were a little shell-shocked, and also we had a really hard time keeping up with everything that was happening. So we assigned, each of us took sort of a point of interest, and you would have 1 or 2 items to report on. And that way we could kind of know, what were the really important action items that needed to be taken care of without getting lost in another thing over here and another thing over there. And we continued like that for the first year or so, and then we began to grow a little bit more and expand, and then it continued from there. So to what it is today. So it's been over 3,000 days, and we are still moving forward, I think the interest and focus are still haven't changed much, and the action, but with the growth in the larger numbers, we are definitely accomplishing a tremendous amount. So that's.
I have not heard anyone count the days.
Yes.
Usually count the days forward, like there's how many days left,
Yeah.
but that was, you're obviously very engaged.
Yes. Yes. So it's been a really important, I think, for our sanity, really, the support that we've given each other, and just an acknowledgement of this isn't right, or this is does this sound crazy? This sounds crazy. And I think we also know that it's so much that we need to have all of us engaged at some level to support that, and we also make it easier for other people to become engaged. I get very clear steps of action, and that's helpful, or very clear links of where to register for something to participate. So I think we support each other that way. I know some of our postcarding was very creative. We had we decorated the postcards. Now we've gotten a little bit more down to business, and we are just getting them out. But they those also sort of we came to it realizing, even at the time with 10 people, that we all had we weren't all 100% of the same opinion for any given subject, and to just respect each other's difference of opinion and to allow for that. And that's also been interesting to hear, since we have a lot of similar but not all the same.
Yeah, I would say nationally we tend to agree more. It's when we get down to the more local, that's when you can find some slight disagreements.
Right. But even then, it's good to be able to play well with other people, in the sense that if you share the values of democracy and rule of law and social justice and all that, it's going to mean different things to different people, but if you share those values, you have to learn to work together.
Well, and also I think we've created a really strong community. Like, I trust everybody in this room because I know them, and I know what they stand for, and I know what they believe. And I think it goes a long way to knowing, that I can count on them, even though I might disagree on a more local issue.
And I think that trust, I feel like we've been in such a strange place where we have so much information coming at us, but at the same time, we're all in different silos. So it's so hard to say, well, why can't they see this? Well, that's because they're not in yours. So it's really important to have that trust in your information, and I think we work.
Well, and we joke, we know we're in a blue bubble. We recognize that. And a lot of times we're okay with that.
A lot of times we need
We
that.
need that, yes.
I mean, my husband said at one point, he goes, I'm never going to get you out of this neighborhood, am I? No, because, I mean, the huddle is my people.
Yeah.
And I know them, I trust them, and I know that if it's a political thing, regardless of the level, I can go and talk to this group and we'll get help.
Right.
And that is so valuable right now.
But also, we rely on each other for things outside of politics now, too. 3 out of the 6 of us in this room have had a hip replacement. And we have all borrowed supplies, right?
Yes.
And so we have other ways that we rely on each other, so.
And a lot of you are also composters.
Yes,
And
and there, so you take an example of environmental concerns. There are people who that is their absolute primary issue.
Right.
One of them is in this room.
She is.
But then, people have, it's not that there are people who don't care about climate issues, it's that not everybody has that as their primary focus.
Right.
So we look to certain leaders within our group, like Susan has given us talks on Medicare, because she's a physician, and she goes to every climate-related meeting in town. So she is super plugged in, so if I want, like I had asked at one of the last meetings, we've been kind of clearing out our house a little bit and thinking about, okay, where can I recycle certain things? I know who I can go to, just on a practical level. If anybody's going to know about those kinds of things, it's going to be Susan or Mary Ellen or something like that. So it's great, lots of great resources within the group.
So that's what happened after the beginning, is that the group really grew organically,
Right.
slowly. It was friends inviting friends or neighbors inviting their neighbor. And the goal was to keep it, within walking distance, because we met in each other's homes.
Yes.
So we don't have people from the suburbs coming in. It's not that we disagree with them. There are a lot of good people in the suburbs. We knock on their doors all the time. But we grew slowly through personal contacts. So one of the first things that we got involved in, of course, was women's issues, because we had met on the bus. And Virginia at that
The
time.
bus to DC.
Yep. Now, I wasn't on the bus because I had this hip problem, so I had to watch on TV.
I was in Utah at Sundance, so we had our own little march, but yeah.
But
I think
when
only 2
we
of us
when we
that remain are
got back
us.
together, maybe you can remember when it started. I remember because I got invited into the group because Mary Helen and I kept seeing each other's faces at all the rallies down at the Capitol, where we were working for the ERA. Virginia was going to be the 38th ratification and put it over the end. And one day Mary Helen just said to me, I keep seeing you. Do you live in the neighborhood? And I told her, yeah, I walk because I live about a mile from the Capitol. And so we talked, and she said, well, why don't you walk home with me? And then I said, well, I'm hungry. Why don't we have lunch? So we had lunch, and she told me about the huddle. And for someone who had just retired and didn't have that same group of people to talk to and that same regimen, it was like a godsend for me to find the huddle, because every day there was something worse coming out of Washington, and having something to do was really important, and having other women to talk to and trust. So we spent a lot of time getting the ERA ratified and protecting abortion rights when I came into the group. This is prior to the loss of Roe, of course. We were going to Planned Parenthood rallies. Several of us have been active for Planned Parenthood. I'd actually worked for Planned Parenthood in former years, and so we were attending fundraisers. And we discovered, of course, exactly as you said, that there were so many issues. There were immigrant rights, climate change, gun violence, and locally housing, etc. And one of the things that happened it gradually was, as Erica said, that some of us took on, we realized we couldn't do everything. It was slow for us to realize this. But eventually we realized that Mary Helen was really involved with immigrant rights and feeding programs, and that she would keep us up to date about the, detentions and the family separations. And I, of course, having been an environmentalist for like 30 years, kept that. I would always bring it to the group. And other people, like we have a member who's been a longtime member of League of Women Voters. And so she taught us all how to register voters. You have to take a little class.
Right.
So a lot of us did that. And then we have another member who was a poll worker, and she taught us what you have to do to jump through the hoops to be an election worker. So and several of us did that. And then that was Brooke. And then we started realizing that we had sort of specialties. We sort of took a survey of like what organizations did everybody belong to.
Oh, yeah.
And then one of the things we did was say, okay, you're going to be our Nova Network contact. Because that's another group like us that started around the same time in Northern Virginia, but grew way bigger and got themselves on YouTube and other places and started the Power Lunch. And they had a lot of good ideas, and they also had a lot of connections to people that we later started being involved with, following on Substack, Jessica Craven, Heather Cox Richardson, et cetera, et cetera. And they were actually guests for this big group.
But they had different goals. Like, we didn't want to grow like
Exactly.
Right.
that. In the beginning, we were trying to keep it small. And I think, like, with T2 is when we kind of just said,
If you need to
Yes.
sit with us, then come
because
on.
also there's a core group of people that are active, and everybody else, they still get all the emails. We share a lot of emails. We were talking about that earlier. So that kind of changed a little bit more recently.
I looked at it. We started, you said, with 10, but in 2018 there were 20 regulars, and by 2024, for the next big election, there were 37 of us. And you asked what happened after this last election, and in January 2025, we suddenly grew to 50. So,
Yes.
so that's what happened
Yeah.
with.
But we're still all in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yep.
And 50, it sounds like a big number. Like, you can't have, it would be very difficult to have 50 people
In
in
someone's house.
everybody's house.
Yeah.
So we do have to, kind of limit it, but we find that, usually, I think the most we've had in meetings is maybe 20.
Maybe, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we usually know in advance
Yeah.
what meetings are gonna bring the bigger pull in,
Yeah,
because
so
we do have
we've
different
had-
topics or
yeah.
guest
And we have a
speakers.
couple of people with big houses, and when we've had big meetings, like we invited Eugene Vindman when he was running the first for his seat, and we were shocked at how many people wanted to hear him.
And he wasn't our congressman.
And he wasn't our congressman,
But still.
Yeah.
but they wanted to hear him, and furthermore, their partners and spouses wanted to as well. And so we have one member with a really big house, and we said, can we have it at your house? And she said, sure. And we had over 50 people at that meeting.
Yeah.
So I talked about our areas of interest,
Right.
but one of the things that was really important to our development as a group is that we got involved in election work. So we have elections every year in Virginia,
We do.
and 2018 was a really important election, and that's when this group really stepped up. And the member who has the big house taught us about fundraising, really good at it. And initially, we would invite people to come and talk to us. So we've had our congresspeople from other districts.
All the mayor candidates.
Right,
Both
so
of the last two elections, we had all the mayoral candidates.
first we would go to Cindy's, but then after we got more comfortable, we actually invited them to come to us,
Yeah.
and we would interview them. So,
Yeah.
we interviewed all the mayoral candidates, and
I think
and
some,
that was really interesting, because we
Yeah.
didn't all agree.
Right.
Right.
I was working for one of them and lobbying my friends. So the things that we learned about fundraising, and we have veteran canvassers who are gonna talk to you about canvassing. We had originally started with postcarding, and Patty's gonna give you a lot more information about how that part grew. But we also, got involved in besides the election monitoring, we learned how to cure ballots.
Right.
A lot of us did phone banking and phone texting. It really depends. Some of us can't stand to pick up the telephone, some of us don't want to knock on doors. So we realized we didn't have to do that we needed to settle into what was comfortable for us. And
We also
It
did a lot
was-
on Medicaid expansion.
Yep.
yep,
We were down on a regular basis at the legislature when that was all taking place. And that was one of my happiest days was when Medicaid expansion
right,
crossed
which
the
happened
line.
after that
Yeah.
2018
Yeah.
election.
Yeah.
We
Right.
also passed the Virginia Clean Economy Act, and we joined Reggie. We had a trifecta. So we get it about
Yes.
how important it is people's votes are, because they make a huge difference in
Yeah.
what gets done.
Yeah.
And of course, then we started, in 2023, we started working on more governance issues, campaign finance, and big money out and upvote, which is ranked choice voting.
Gerrymandering.
Right. And then in 2024, so along the way, we started having questions about where's the most important place to put your money. And so we started learning about how to spend smart, and some of us joined Force Multiplier and then spread that information out about how to choose candidates that could really flip. We also started giving money to on-the-ground organizations like Run for Something, Rural Ground Game, the State Project, and I think a lot of us have pretty much stopped giving to PACs and to the DNC, especially after this
Right.
last horrible, I don't know, was it ProPublica? Who did the whole expose?
yeah, that's a good word for it. I can't remember which group it was, but yeah.
Anyway, so we've gone through the ups and downs of being discouraged about
Yes.
some of the structural problems with elections. And as we got into this last election, of course, we were hearing and reading a lot about Project 2025. And I think most of us were getting really concerned, and now, of course, we've got it. And that's when we had the big jump in members. And so I thought I would finish, sort of the evolution of our work by telling you about, we got a lot of members who are not only new to the group, but they're new to the fam. So a number of, Richmond demographics are changing, and our neighborhood especially is changing. A lot of people are moving in from New York, New Jersey, et cetera, because of the overall demographics of what's happening in Richmond, which is that we've over the years become a wonderful city that's changed a lot from being the,
Red, purple, blue.
right, being the capital of the Confederacy. All of us live within a few blocks of the monuments that came down. So we all participated in Black Lives Matter and getting those monuments down. We've all seen, the reactions of the city and the police force. We've had a few of us have had their kids tear gassed or whatever.
Not on purpose.
So now the things that we're working on really have to do with integrating these new members, retaining our old members, increasing our contacts with other groups that are working in this space. Like, we have met with Red, Wine, and Blue leadership. We've met with Indivisible. A lot of us are members of Indivisible. We've started having a lot of new ideas about supporting rural billboards. One of our members really looked into that. We also had a member who started her own group.
Yeah.
So we have an
Successfully,
outpost now.
They
And
did
so-
radio ads.
Yeah,
We
they're
did-
really active down there.
They are.
Right, and so we
So-
supported
I
that.
posted something about the Westmoreland County Dens,
Mhm.
Northern Neck, because I thought they were doing a lot of smart things. And on Blue Sky, and someone posted, oh, they're terrible. You know, the last time I tried to vote there in Pennsylvania, they wouldn't respond. And I had to reply to the post, I was talking about Virginia. I don't know anything about Pennsylvania. So it's, we have some,
Apparently I don't either.
but I think sometimes I blame Google. Like if you Google Lancaster, you get Pennsylvania far faster than you get Virginia. But
Interesting.
So,
Back to Paige.
yeah, so Paige is our Northern Neck contingent.
yes.
And my final thought was about the work we've done. We've learned a tremendous amount. We've been support for each other. And we have a lot of tools in our toolbox.
Yes.
We've learned a lot about being participants in democracy.
Yes.
And at the current time, we've noticed there's sort of less email, maybe fewer people coming. We've had our little downs. It's really hard, this environment,
Yeah.
keeping balance and focus when we have people calling us, radical left lunatics and domestic terrorists. You know, most of us are grandmas.
Not Patty.
Understood.
But we,
So, I know we're gonna keep on
Yes.
keeping on, but
we keep each other hopeful.
Yes.
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 We keep each other hopeful.
Yes.
It's, one of my friends know me as famously being on news blackout, like I don't wanna know.
She is.
I used to be like one of the most politically engaged people in the world. You know, people would know that they could ask me, oh, what's going on with this or that? But in the last few years, I just have, it's too toxic for me. I get too
Yes.
upset. I would get into like real, kind of nasty arguments with people who would push my buttons, and I just said, no, not doing this anymore.
Right.
I'm gonna focus on what I can have some control over. Keep it local, keep it simple, and if I get too bogged down in what's going on, the big things going on in Washington and the big horror show that's happening, I can't do it, I get paralyzed. So I need to have
they're not
something.
paralyzed. These
No.
are our two champion canvassers.
But
So why didn't you
that's-
talk about that?
But that's something I feel like if I do it, I'm having an impact.
Right.
Mhm.
That personal
Instead of-
connection.
Yeah, instead of, getting
And-
mired in what I can't do anything about.
When I turn to the news this year, I'm constantly, in the morning, I read the paper, Dorothy Parker's comment, what fresh hell is this?
Yeah,
That's when okay, what fresh hell is this?
yeah, and that's why I don't do it, because I don't wanna live in hell.
Right.
I need to live in a positive place where, I live my life and I'm not completely bogged down, because I'll never leave the house, just be like reading, oh my God, what do you do now?
And we love canvassing. And Erica and I have canvassed in many elections in Virginia, and we've also canvassed in North Carolina and in Georgia. And it's always, it feels like a sacrament
Right.
for citizens. I absolutely love it. The first time I realized this makes a difference was in 2006. I was living in Northern Virginia, and I went out canvassing for Jim Webb, which all the talking heads said he'll never beat George Allen for the Senate seat.
Right.
And knocking on doors, and I'm getting tremendous feedback, And I remember saying to my brother, who's very well connected, I'm not, with any of the big, I said, he's going to win. And he goes,
Right.
it's not going to happen. I said, nope, I'm telling you, I'm seeing at the doors, he's going to win. And he did by a very slim margin.
Right.
And then in 2008, in the Obama campaign, I was a precinct captain. I thought I knew where every Democrat in my precinct lived. Nope, there were all these people I didn't know about knocking on their doors. It was like, it was such a sense of elation.
Right.
So if you're lucky enough to have a friend that you canvass with, like I do, you actually have so much fun because you can talk and laugh and go over things, but you also see things on the ground early,
Right.
Both good and bad. So that election, when the Democrats took control of the local legislature, we were canvassing for Dawn Adams. She was running against this guy Pelosi, who was Republican. He'd been in forever, and we were like, she's going to win. I mean, you could just feel the energy, know. On the other hand, this last election with Kamala Harris going around, we did see a number of young white men
In their 30s.
in their 30s.
Giving us the stone place.
Yeah, it was.
Did you recognize them from previous canvassing?
Oh, no.
No, but they were just knocking on the doors.
They
But
give you
You
the
get the list.
name
You
and
get
the
your
age
list.
of the person, gender and age, and so this is a millennial male, and that used to be great.
Yeah.
Okay, these people
Right.
are on our side.
it wasn't so great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was scary because we would see people who weren't going to vote, people who would say things like, "We don't know who she is."
Yeah.
So,
She doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
like kind of
And
fun
then-
talking points.
Do your research.
Yeah.
That was
Do your own research.
okay. Yeah. So that was disheartening. But we were just out yesterday canvassing for Abigail Spanberger, and we had some incredible conversations. A South Asian family who invited us into their house. We only stepped inside the door because I really didn't want to take my shoes off. And they really wanted information, and Erica was such a great job in describing when and where they could vote and the hours, and then they offered us persimmons from their
From their
tree,
garden.
from their
Oh.
garden. It was just such a
That's
lovely
awesome.
encounter
Yeah.
with them, and they made their plan on. They wanted to vote on election day.
Right.
The daughter was going to take her parents on election day, and it was a beautiful unfolding.
Right.
Yeah, and there was no real evidence in the beginning, A, that they were going to vote for our candidate, or B, that they were even going to vote.
Right.
But after the conversation, I know that they're going to vote.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
that, and that, to sort of pivot to how I feel I can have the most impact.
Right.
I totally appreciate our postcarders. I love them. I love what they do. I've done it with them. I'm not great at it. I don't like to write. Stopped writing after college. Everything's typed. I know from experience, and I'll just pivot back to, I met Kathy at a Huddle meeting, and she was about to go out after the meeting to go out and canvass for Tim Kaine. And I said, "Oh, can I come with you?" And the rest is history.
And Tim Kaine was elected.
Tim Kaine was elected.
And she always gets her picture taken with him.
Well, no, I get a hug.
Yeah, and a hug,
Oh.
right?
He'll take a
Wait,
picture
so-
with anybody.
Can you get a hug?
No, I am not on the hug list, but that's okay. I don't care. I just want to get the best person elected.
My experience with canvassing, which I don't do enough of, but if people invite you in, and sometimes you can't, sometimes like it's late in the day, you don't want to take the time, you can't, but it's good to go in. Whenever someone invites you in, it's always good to go in, I think. But if they invite you in and you sit down in the kitchen, like they lead you in, my experience is they want to tell you what's on their mind. And if they sit down in the living room, they want to hear what's on your mind.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because I've had both, where you come in and I say, "Please have a seat," and they kind of look at you, and so you tell them what you're there for, But other times it's been you go in the kitchen and then they're going to not complain. They're going to report their experience with like the school board, and
Okay.
you want to hear it.
Yeah, their local
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I find that choice of room that they make
Well,
can sometimes tell me.
The other thing that's been eye-opening is that, I have always thought that my radar is fairly good at sizing people up. And, you get a, like these young men, like, I can tell he's not gonna vote with us.
Yeah.
But I had one experience that really changed the way I look at the world. It was election day in 2016. Another friend and I, who have canvassed quite a lot over the years, were canvassing on election day in South Richmond, which is tricky. It's the demographics there are quite, it's a poor area. But there are a few neighborhoods that are very mixed. It's all sort of working poor people, homeowners mostly, black and white, neighbors, but not necessarily neighborly. And we knocked on a door. They were on my list, so I knew.
They were
at least
registered to vote.
They were registered to vote, but also that they maybe tended to vote Democrat, but
Right.
they're not, these lists are not particularly accurate.
Right.
And a man came to the door in full fatigue, was in his probably mid-60s, full fatigue, with a gun strapped on his hip. And I hold Mary's hand, and I'm like, let's get out of here. And he invited us in, and the person on the list was his wife.
Okay.
And he invited us in, and we're like, but we don't want to piss him off, right? And so we stepped in, and his wife was kind of reclining on the sofa. She looked like maybe she wasn't well. And we didn't mention any names of candidates. We just want to make sure you get out to vote. And I said, and the wife said, yes, we voted. And I said, well, would you mind telling me who you voted? And I clearly expected them to say, of course we voted for Donald Trump. She said, oh no, we voted for Hillary. And I was like, oh, terrific. And it turned out that the council person in that area, who's a Democrat, is very hands-on.
Yeah.
Reva Trammell.
Mhm.
And she does a lot for her. She's very on the ground
Yeah.
working with her constituents. And they love her, and they'll do anything they say, that she says. And so she gives them her voter, the sample
Endorsements.
ballot.
Yeah, sample ballot.
And they're like, okay, Reva says, vote.
I do find it's the surprises that, either canvassing or just any kind of election work. I was an election officer in Arlington several elections ago, and it was kind of raining, and someone had voted. He had a cane. He was older, and after he voted, I saw he was just staying by the door. He wasn't going back out. So I assumed he was waiting for a ride. So I went over and said, "Can I find you a chair while you're waiting?" It's totally fine to wait. And he said, "No, I'm going to be heading out soon," he said. And then he turned to me and said, some people, they won't give you a ride to the polls after you tell them who you're going to vote for. And I immediately thought, okay, either the Democrats or the Republicans were kind of mean to this guy because, and I'm thinking, I hope it was the Republicans. But then he said to me, I asked my wife and I asked my son, and they said, not if you're going to vote for that guy. So it was his family had turned him down
Wow.
for a ride.
Yeah, I would probably do that.
So I still don't know who he voted for, or who they voted for, but I was like, okay, that's a tough family.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We had one, this is also with another huddle member, had an experience. We were canvassing, and we knocked on a door, and it was, oftentimes the young person will be on the Democrats list, and the parents or the grandparents of that person who
Right.
own the house are not. And so you get like a 23-year-old adult female, something like that, on the list, but the people that she lives with are not. And so we knocked on this one door, and no answer, but we see the woman in the backyard. So we go out to the backyard and ask for the person whose name is on the list. She took one look at us and she basically called us baby killers. But she says that my granddaughter, she's mentally disabled, and I can tell you right now, she's not voting for a baby killer. So my friend, who is extremely outspoken and very forward, she just noticed that she had a beautiful manicure, and she said, first of all, she says, we're not baby killers, but I love your nails. And we got into this whole conversation about where she gets her nails done and what kind of product she uses and all that, and won her over as a human, on a human level. She was never going to vote with us, but maybe she'll stop calling us baby killers. And those kinds of interactions that you have, you can only get those on the doors. You're never going to get that even on the phone banks. You're not going to get it by texting. You're not going to get it by postcarding. And when you feel like you've changed a mind, whether it's they're too apathetic to get out and vote, they don't understand the importance, not necessarily changing candidates, although we did have a couple of really interesting conversations. It was a state senate primary, and Joe Morrissey, who you may have heard of,
I've heard of Joe
was running against a lovely young woman named Lacherise Aird, and for the Senate nomination. Just for the nomination, for the Democratic nomination. And Joe Morrissey is incredibly popular in the places where he's popular. People who love him because he, fighting Joe and all that. And we canvassed women. Mixed, again, there was one woman who was 93 who was going to vote for Joe. And we were like, well, you know where he stands on choice? And she's like, well, he's pro-choice. And I said, no. And he said, if he gets in, he's going to vote with Youngkin, and we're going to be sunk. And she changed. So it's, it's hard to explain, but it's the heart.
It's also true that when we were canvassing in Georgia, we saw all the good work that Stacey Abrams did.
Yes.
Because we were canvassing in extremely poor black neighborhoods in Thomasville, Georgia. And
it's almost Alabama.
Yeah, it's something. And people there knew where they needed to vote.
Yes.
They knew what the hours were. They were so well educated and so determined to vote. And one woman, this young mother, and she had like these 3 little kids, they were all running around, and she knew all this. She goes, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. And Erica kind of walked her through, like, okay, that day, what would you need to do this and that? And she helped her basically come up with a voting plan. And I felt like, okay, I think she's gonna get there. But it just made me respect Stacey Abrams and all she did in that state. But it was continuous contact. It's not like us just coming in there. It's every single day.
But it was also, I think, knocking on doors that aren't on the list.
Yeah, we knocked every door.
Right. You've got to do that in so many cases, because otherwise.
Yeah,
it was
but
great.
So many people register to vote. They don't think it's important.
Right.
They might have registered 15 years ago, whatever.
Right.
And sometimes they don't even know that there's an election coming up.
Right, and then the classic presidential-only voters.
Right.
They show up every 4 years, whereas a lot of important decisions are made in those 3 years in the middle.
Yeah, but the first year we went down to Georgia was for a runoff for the Senate seat, and there were two Senate seats up that were going up for runoff, and I was not very optimistic about it. I just thought, but I mean, we decided to go because we thought it would, maybe we could make a difference.
Yeah.
And we actually had to look, so, make a long story short, one of our friends has a family farm in, just west of Tallahassee, which is 30 miles from the Georgia border. And so we went down to that, their farm, and we used that as our base, and we would drive into Georgia every day. And the nearest town is this town of Thomasville, it's a very nice town.
Yeah.
Pretty large, significant black Black and minority population. And we met the people we met the Democrats there, and they were so strategic about it.
They were
They
great.
had these maps, and it's like, okay, these 4 houses, like we've never gotten them, we can go there. It was profound to see, you knock on, no lists, you knock on the door,
Right.
somebody comes to the door, more than likely they would be inclined to vote for Democrats, and you just get them to come out and vote. And it was early voting where it is, but because Georgia is famous for voter suppression, so
Right.
they make it extremely difficult, even under the best of circumstances.
Yeah.
So.
I've knocked on doors in Arlington, off the list, like just knocking around the street for different things. And the few times that someone comes to the door and they'll go, I've lived here all my life. No one's ever asked me what I think. No one's ever knocked on my door and asked me what I think. And you want to say, that's because you never vote.
Yeah.
Or you never give money. Because actually, and voting is a lot cheaper. Politicians pay attention to you if you vote or you give money. And voting's a lot cheaper. But I said, no, I want to know what you're thinking. Here's the candidates I'm supporting. So those are the highlights to me.
Yeah.
Well, not all of us can canvas. Yes, yes.
Oh.
So I actually did some canvassing in 2008 for Obama, and that's when I learned it's not for me. And so I joined the huddle in 2018. I think after you, I was probably next in line out of this group. But excuse me, we started postcarding just at meetings at first. Everybody would kind of bring their own supplies, and I can't remember at that point where we were getting addresses. It must have been,
Tony the Democrat.
was it Tony the Democrat, or
That was one, as well as,
postcards
Postcards
for Virginia?
for Virginia.
Yeah,
yes,
which are
Henrico
still,
and I had registered.
okay,
We're
right.
both-
So, we would just sit around somebody's dining room table and do them together. And then, as far as I can remember, it was fall of 2019 when we needed to flip the Virginia House and Senate. Do I have those dates right?
Yeah,
And
right.
so we started ordering them more in bulk. Anna, one of our members, was a printer, and so we came up with different postcarding fronts, and she would have them printed, and we would share the cost and just start doing them at meetings, but then also taking them home and doing them on our own. I actually found a picture in my phone from October of 2019. We stacked them all, we collected them and stacked them all on a dining room table or a coffee table. And I don't know that it was all the cards we did that season, but now that I'm so versed in about how many are in a stack, I think it was around 1,000 that was on that table. So that was a record for us at the time. But then, and we continued to do postcarding like that in that vein for the next few years through COVID and all that, when we were meeting on Zooms because we couldn't meet in person. But then in the spring of 2024, we knew that the Biden-Trump election was coming up in the fall, and we heard about this Postcards for Swing States organization. And they would send you the cards and the addresses. I don't even think we needed labels for those, and we would have to write them and pay for the stamp, which that was typical of, we always covered the cost of the postage, but this is the first time they were covering basically the cost of the postcards as well. So we ordered, I think, 2,000 for our group that first time, and we're like, oh, we've got plenty of time, we've got until October. But we started meeting weekly at the local Whole Foods in our neighborhood, and it took us a couple of weeks to figure out what time worked best for everyone, but we settled on 4 o'clock every Monday. And so we started meeting every Monday at Whole Foods at 4 o'clock for just 1 hour. Kind of like we had done with the huddle. It was just a 1 hour meeting. That was all you were committed for. And so we started helping other people and putting smaller packets together and kind of training them on what to do. And, because we were going through them so quickly, we realized that we could do other things. So we started kind of mixing in. Sometimes we'd put those on hold and there'd be a special election or a primary or something that we wanted to do postcards for. So we would put the swing state cards for October on hold, and we'd do the other ones that had a shorter deadline. So, and these weren't just cards for Virginia, I should say. These swing states actually weren't for Virginia at all at that point. They were like Ohio and Georgia and Florida, Arizona. Yeah, like I did Florida because my parents live in Florida, and so that was my connection. So anyway, we started getting people asking us how they could help because they were interested in doing it too. And so we started inviting them to Whole Foods at that same time. Like I said, putting together the smaller packets that we could share. We were trying very hard to train them, if we could, to get their own addresses, because some organizations you have to download the addresses, others they provide them for you when they mail stuff, so everybody's different. So we worked on that and semi-success. Sometimes the more technologically challenged, we needed to help them more. But we ended up, we had more and more people coming, and so we finally realized we need to start keeping track to be able to reach these people.
Right.
So the people that started coming, we started collecting their emails. And, it was also an organic growth because they were just coming in by word of mouth. I think Anna ended up on a couple of lists that some people contacted her and then she brought them in. But for the most part, it was, other neighbors and, they may not live in the fan where we live, but they would come in from elsewhere in the city. So we now have about 30 people on what I call it the postcarding guest list, because they're not in the huddle, but they're close, and I've become friends with some of them too that I didn't know before the postcarding. We have had probably at our max maybe 16 to 20 people there on any given week. We use the two big, they have two tables that seat 8, so we tend to try to take those. Yes. Well, and we have talked about, it's emotional support when we show up now, especially this year with all that's going on, because we wrote postcards. By the way, I was trying to estimate how many we did for 2024, because we probably ordered close to 4,000 of just those swing state ones that we all worked on. But then I would do 20 or 50 at a time for different candidates, as we got closer to the election and we knew who the Democratic candidate was. And I think it could be 10,000 that we did as a group. I mean, it was a lot.
It's a lot.
So
it is good to get pictures of them going.
Yes, well,
That
and
impressed me.
yeah, and it was hard I tried to get a count last year just by people, self-reporting, but they all had different mail dates, and so you couldn't mass them like we did for that year that I found the other picture. But I tend to take pictures of the different candidates that I write for, so I can kind of remember. And you have to take pictures a certain way. You're not supposed to show people's addresses, right? So I was able to kind of go back through my pictures, and I could kind of remind myself all the different candidates that I wrote for. But we probably did close to 10,000 by 2024. We took a few weeks off. We needed a break. Our hands needed a break after the election. And, we were all just so demoralized after November of last year. And so, but there were still more elections. There were all these special elections. There was that Supreme Court Wisconsin election. So a core group of us, we kept meeting because we liked getting together. It was about the community in that respect. And so excuse me, a couple of us, we've hardly missed a week since we started a year and a half ago. And we've done, like I said, that special election. We've even started doing thank you cards to certain electeds, or I remember we did a batch to national parks. And those are just one-offs,
Right.
but, just, it made us feel better to thank someone,
Oh, yeah.
and not just to
That's
get out the
stands out
vote.
because
Yeah.
Most mail people get is complaints and
Right.
criticism. So it
Right.
totally stands out.
Yeah. So we haven't quite done as many cards, obviously, this year as we did last year for obvious reasons. It's not a big national election, but we've written a lot of Virginia cards this year. And just like I keep saying, it was a rough 2025, and getting together every week has really helped us
Yeah.
keep that community and keep our sanity.
I have found it hard because it's pretty common to say vote your hopes, not your fears. But so much bad seems to be coming down that it's hard for me not to be more motivated by my fears. So I try to fight that. I try to vote for somebody and not against somebody. I think it's very hard to keep that thinking.
I think one of the things we have done is that we have helped each other to curate our media. So I know my media intake has changed really dramatically
Yes.
over the time. And also we talk about how we're coping, what we do. And, so I know that it's helped me to control the outrage. And I think we all have, just sort of stopped talking about the latest outrage.
Right. Yes.
Trying to keep, as Erica had said, it's just.
Because it's
Head
never
above water,
ending,
yeah.
so.
Yeah, what is that, cortisol? Is that
And-
it?
Yes, and it doesn't get us anywhere, so.
Right,
we-
yeah.
I have been to a large number of, not all protests, because sometimes it feels more like a rally, but rallies, protests, gatherings, and I found that's been very important.
Well, we go to lots of those.
And we go together now too.
Yeah.
Like that's the other thing that we do as a group. Not everybody goes, but
Right.
who's going down, we'll
Yeah.
walk together if it's close and
And Richmond has lots of protests.
Well, we're the capital.
Exactly.
I'm trying to get everybody revved up to get the lobby days on their calendar because
Yes.
January is the heavy lobby day.
Yes.
I
I finally did one of
Fingers
those.
crossed that we have Democrats to lobby.
Yes. Right, and, that's where we get our updates on what's happening with governance issues, where we support our women's reproductive rights, and where I work on environmental issues, and we work on immigration and other issues, so.
Yeah, and a number of us also went to Lobby Day for the Virginia Interfaith.
Right, that's another one, and
Yeah,
Kim
they're great.
Bobo.
Who's
Interfaith Center for
gone
Public
now.
Policy.
Yes, I've loved their
I
work.
was out. We got on a bus in Fairfax.
Yeah,
Came out
Right.
today.
yeah,
And we've lobbied with Moms Demand Action.
yeah.
Yeah, so we try to keep up with our various groups, and our issue is when they need us, we can show up, because
We're
most
here.
of us are like a mile from the
Right.
Capitol.
Right.
I did find the bus from Fairfax was a lot of us who are older. So I got on, half awake, pre-dawn, and I had to go, wait, is this, maybe this is a bus that goes to shopping outlets? And maybe this is on the right bus.
Atlantic City.
Atlantic City. That was the one Richmond? Okay.
And do you know about the
Started.
Pulse? We have free buses in Richmond now.
Oh, I'm not sure I knew about this.
Yeah, it's called all of them are free, but the one that we use, because it runs right down Broad Street, so it runs from, those of us in the fan can usually walk just a few blocks, hop on the bus, and then it goes all the way right down to the Capitol, and the courthouses, et cetera, and get off. And so there's always a problem parking downtown, but this
Right.
keeps us from that. And so a lot of people in the suburbs go to Willow Lawn because there's good parking there. And then they hop on, that's the end of the bus, they hop on and come on down.
I think we probably have to wrap.
Were you gonna say something quickly before we?
Oh, that's okay. I mean, it was, well, just saying, when we started, there was another group in the neighborhood next to us of younger women. Who had, school-aged children. So they, and they met for a long time. Their activities were different than ours, and there wasn't postcarding so much as, they did other things, and also had speakers and that sort of thing. So I would talk with a few of them, and we kind of kept in touch to see what was happening and things. And they've since disbanded a bit, but they're still, they'll pull things together, really more on a local level. But, it changes, your availability for time as well as threshold for,
Right.
I gotta do something
Yes.
versus.
yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah, like
I
both-
always cared about these issues, but I was running a private practice. I had 3 small children, and so I never came into, I lived out in the suburbs then, I never came into the city. I would never have done any of this
Right.
stuff. So that's why you see it.
Yeah, most of us are, gray hair, grandmothers.
But I do want to give a shout out to some groups that are not in the city, but they have been instrumental in making us feel like there's stuff that we can do. Liberal Women in Chesterfield County.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Andrew Wright, who made national news for just 2016, feeling so isolated, and she found she's founded a Democratic sign in her neighborhood, which is notoriously Republican. And she just said, well, there must be others. And so she started to get people together. The other is Together We Will, which grew out of the Hillary Pantsuit Nation. And the head of the leader of the Henrico County Democrats is a dynamo.
She is great.
And she is great because Richmond is so blue, we would need to get engaged with races that were outside of the city.
Yes.
So,
Beyond
for
Richmond.
instance, when Abigail Spanberger decided to run against Dave Bratt, that was
Oh, yes.
that
Chesterfield.
was amazing. And
It's the only time I ever knocked doors.
And so, we would, because we wanted to do something and we didn't have a race that was competitive in our area, so we would filter into Henrico and Chesterfield County so that we could work for those candidates to get them elected. And that plugged us into a lot of folks over there. And
Way before I went to the huddle, I used to go to Liberal Women of Chesterfield
Yeah.
County. The first meeting I ever went to was 300 people in the high school auditorium. It was just amazing.
I've been inspired by them to get off your butt and do something.